So, Dad, you were born in Boise, Idaho, and then you moved to.
Seattle, Capitol Hill.
You were born in. Oh, you moved to Seattle and Capitol Hill.
Right.
And
And
what about you? What year was that?
I don't know.
Okay. So,
I said, I my first recollection of life was laying up in a bed in Alder, Washington, where I had been moved by my family because I had split my right leg and in the park on Capitol Hill, and they had moved up to take over the homestead at Alder somewhere in that time span.
and that homestead was your father's homestead.
That was Martin Hodis and wife.
Martin Hodis is your
That's a
grandfather's.
grandfather.
So I'm named. I thought I was named after you. So I know. I didn't know I was. I had a grand. I didn't know I had a great grandfather by the name of Martin Hodis.
His name was Martin Hodis.
And your Martin is named after your grandfather's Martin.
I guess.
Okay.
I, I, I didn't do the naming.
Okay. Well, I guess that's.
So I was just getting to the point where I could get out of bed when we moved up there.
And so you moved to Alder, and that was the homestead in Alder.
That was the homestead. Dad had, well, Martin had a number of children, Dad being one of them. And there was another one that lived over in eastern Washington.
That would have been what, 1920,
Yeah,
1930?
yeah, it's in that time span. I have no knowledge.
Okay.
Another one had a hardware store in Tacoma that he ran very successfully, and another was a woman who was married to a man who ran the grocery store in Alder, Washington. Alder was a town of maybe 120 people at the most, that area, not just Alder.
I read in some archives way back when the town of Alder was named. Actually, your grandfather was part of that Alder. What are we going to name the town? And I found that in some old.
Yeah, well,
archive.
I never knew about my grandmother, other than the fact that she closed the car door on Brother Fred's hand. So she was infamous for that. Martin had come over from Germany, and he had settled in North Dakota. And then, having realized what a mistake that was,
Oh my Lord! North
at
Dakota.
some point he decided to haul ass and came over and did a 160-acre homestead at Alder. That was back in the days where
You could just go grab some land and say this is mine.
well, you had to fill out a lot of paperwork, and you had to do certain things to be able to claim. The claim was signed off somewhere at the very early 1900s. I don't know the exact date, but it was very early. But he had settled on it in the late 1890s.
Is that where the 160 acres? Is that where basically Lake Alder is now?
That's where Lake Alder is now, except that 20 acres did not go underwater. But that occurred in the 1940s, early 1940s, that the city of Tacoma had a dam on the Nisqually River. It was a small dam, and they decided they needed a bigger one, and so they built a large dam, which flooded out the Alder Valley, and at the same time they built a smaller dam down below it, just to take advantage of that water.
Right. So in the what kind of activities when you were growing up in Alder? What did you do? High school and
Well, at Alder was the first thing, of course, was grade school, and we had a good grade school. Graduating class was four.
Four.
I skipped the third grade. My brother Jack had skipped 2 grades. I don't know which of the 2 he had skipped, but I skipped the third grade. And I had my first trauma was that in the 8th grade, I was not the valedictorian. Billy Roeder was a woman.
You still remember names from back then?
Well,
that was a trauma.
That was a trauma that I was not the valedictorian.
And how many people was it? You said, well, I mean, 4.
There was 4 in
four of us.
In
Four
the
of us.
graduating class.
4 of us, and you had somebody else that would beat you out.
Yeah, and the duties on the farm were a lot. I mean, you had to work 20 acres was in hay, and so you had to work the 20 acres hard on that. That was a lot of work, and get it into the barn. We had a barn. We had 2 horses and usually had 4 to 5 cows. We had a zillion chickens, and Dad had built when I was very young, had built a pond on the acreage that was about 100 feet long by about 50 feet wide, and about 20 feet deep in the deepest part. So we had the ability to go swimming, and you catch fish from it when you also had a creek going through it.
Oh, so you had actually trout in there too, huh?
Oh, we had Alder Creek had good trout, and so I would fish Alder Creek at my earliest age, probably 6 years old, 5 years old, somewhere in there. And all the duties were related to the farm. My duty, my youngest duty, was to take care of the calves until they were 19 weeks old, and then they were slaughtered for veal. But I can always remember with my legs over the calf and my hand on his head and my fingers in their mouth to get them to start drinking milk.
Oh, sure.
So there was lots of work to do, but there was fun things to do, like swimming and things like that.
Did you the old adage, I had to walk 5 miles in the snow and 10 miles back? Is that something you had to go to school?
Well, you walked to school. The school walk was about a mile. I don't recall ever having a lot of snow. We had snow, but it didn't have a lot of it.
That was just kind of being the old saying.
We had a lot of forest fires from logging days, and the clouds would be there and whatever. But
right. You mentioned so you went to from high school. You went from where? From high school?
From Alder, you took the bus to Eatonville for high school. And Dad, I'm going roughly. It's roughly now, about 42 or so, and about the 3rd grade of high school, he bought the hardware store in Eatonville. He worked for Marshall Wells, and he'd always been a hardware salesman and what have you. He knew everything about it. So he bought the owner there was retiring, and so he bought that. And so we moved we moved to Eatonville from Alder, because Alder was getting flooded out anyhow.
Right.
And my best experience in Alder was to pick cascara bark and dry it and sell it for
laxative.
Well, it was, yeah, but I sold it for 19 cents a pound dried.
19 cents a pound, that's good wages today.
Well, yeah, but you had to not only pick it, you had to dry it, and then you had to crush it, and then you sold it.
Oh, so that's a different story.
With that, I bought a horse, and with the horse, I bought a saddle and bridle and everything.
All off of cascara bark.
All off of cascara bark.
That's at 19 cents a pound. That's a lot of cascara bark.
A lot of work.
A lot of work. What do you say about some of today's kids who don't want to go out and do this kind of work?
I pity for them, because this was a degree of independence that I had with a German father and mother.
It was a way to get the heck out of house, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was. Not too many people owned their own horse.
Oh, yeah. What age was that?
Up to then, I was riding my bicycle from Alder down to Eatonville.
Oh, so you could now you could ride a horse to Alder.
I could ride a horse down.
Was that 9 miles, 10 miles?
It was around over 10 miles.
10 miles. It's much easier to ride to let the horse do the work. How old were you at that?
Well, as I say, I graduated from high school when I was 16.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew you skipped a grade.
I had skipped a grade.
I didn't even think about that, the age difference.
So, anyhow, the war came on, and in the store, Dad gave me permission to set up a sporting goods section, and so I set up the sporting goods section, bought all the stuff down in Tacoma, did all the buying.
Right.
That wasn't even.
So your family fared pretty well through the Great Depression then.
Yeah, you had to work, and Dad not only bought the hardware store, then he wised up that with the war on, it was difficult to get certain things, and so he bought the city hall in Eatonville,
which is now the hose?
And then he set up a display area at the end of it with all glass display, and he had other people give him concessions for their products.
Sure.
So that they couldn't have if he had it over in the main store.
Okay.
So he was running two stores.
And that's now the Hodis Masonic Temple?
Yeah.
So that used to be the city hall?
Yeah.
He bought the city hall?
Yeah, he bought the whole thing.
So the city of Eatonville didn't want the city hall, or they built it?
I don't know what they wanted or didn't want. He bought it.
Interesting. See, I didn't know it was a city hall. I thought it was just a big old warehouse.
No. It was they had the Oddfellows and the Masons, and everybody had their meetings in the upper part of the hall.
So there's some more history I didn't know about.
And then, of course, he also then got a concession for the liquor store for the area. And you got a concession from the state of Washington.
Well, you got a building. So now you had the hardware store, you had a concession store, and you also had a liquor store.
So one of my many duties was stocking the shelves on the liquor store.
So that was, 17 years old? 18 years old?
No, I wasn't 18.
Oh,
I
okay.
was long gone.
Okay.
But so anyhow, I had lots of duties to do and things to do.
Okay, I'll leave it here. We'll pause here for now.